Hey everybody, welcome back to Alum House Sound. I'm Dave, and today we're going to be talking about the 4-step process that I do anytime I'm running live sound. Let's roll the intro clip and then we'll get right into it. All right, so recently I've been called out to run live sound for a number of gigs, and some of these I've posted pictures on the YouTube page, and people commented about either with the training, what was I teaching them, what were they looking to learn, but more importantly, what are the steps that I use anytime I go to a new venue that I've never been and I'm running live sound. You know, a lot of us get used to our groups, our venue, our bands, our musicians, and kind of our processes, and we get into it and we just start like we always start. But if you get called out to somewhere new, the question is, what do? You don't know the venue, you don't know the people, you don't know the musicians, the PA, all of those things. Now, I'm not a big name touring artist. I'm not getting called out for super big gigs with flying rigs and stuff that are pulled in. I'm typically getting called in to help a church or a conference run sound, and it's usually going to be at a church or maybe a rented space. And so I'm coming in and I'm going to quickly test and figure out the PA. I'm also going to do these 4 steps before and with the band when I'm doing my checks and pre-service setup. So let's get into that. I'm going to hopefully have some slides that pop up here and maybe full screen. But here's the first thing I do. I take music, I take my phone or my iPod or whatever you've got, and I plug some music in, and I take the EQ and I turn it off on that input. Run it through the PA. Listen to it and evaluate, what is it that this PA sounds like? Are there any tendencies? I like to walk the room as well, because walking the room can tell you a lot about maybe where some dead spots are in the room. Maybe you've got some bass heavy spots. Maybe the bass is heavier at the tech booth than it is in the seats. That's a free tip. Now, when I get to running sound, what are these 4 steps that I do to make sure that I've got a good idea of how things are going to run, and I can comfortably and confidently run this sound check and make the band feel comfortable as well. The biggest compliment I got recently, you may have seen this picture here, and this was of me at a church. They were doing a conference for kind of their denomination or group affiliation. And so they had a band that had come into this space, never been on the stage. They're used to playing at their church, but not in this space. I got called in to run sound, and I'm used to my church and not this space. And so it was a PreSonus 32 channel rack mounted unit. And so I had to quickly figure out the rig, but the biggest compliment I got at the end of the event was the bandmates, the band members and team members came up and they said, man, we felt so comfortable with you running sound. We knew that you had everything under control, and even if you were trying to fine tune things, you still seemed calm. So how do we get you there? All right, step 1 is going to be a line check. What's a line check? This is the most basic of basic, and unfortunately for many of you, you get a line check when you're actually looking for a sound check. A line check is going through channel by channel and making sure, this is usually run by the sound technician, but making sure that each microphone lines up with what you're supposed to see on the board. A lot of times I've got an iPad that I'm using, so I can walk up on stage and I can do this myself. But I'm looking to make sure that channel 1 is channel 1, channel 2 is channel 2. You're going to check all of the microphones, all of the inputs, because you want to know where they live on the board. As an example, this PreSonus setup that I was running on had, they only use about 8 channels, but they've got a 32 channel mixer. And so they had used various groups of 8 channels depending on the event that they were running. They would mute all the other ones and they would have these 8 set up for this event, or these 8 set up for Sunday morning. I know it seems kind of weird, but that's what they did. That's just kind of the culture that they got into. And so what I needed to do was figure out these 8 channels. Well, it was like, here's a pastor's microphone, and then a couple channels later, here's one microphone, and then there's a couple microphones over here. I was able to find those channels and then move them and group them so that I had all my vocals in one spot, and then I had kind of my band and drums in another spot. That at least made it comfortable for me to run the event. All right, so step 1 was a line check. Let's jump into step 2. Step 2 is setting gain properly. Now, each board is slightly different. I usually run the X32, but this event I was running on a PreSonus board. So what I'm looking for is I'm trying to get into that minus 10 dB area. A lot of people talk about the minus 18 dBFS rule, and that is great. It's a great rule to use. Whatever makes you comfortable, find a spot and shoot for all your inputs to be there. Since I was only running, I think 5 mics on drums, but those were only for the stream, not for the house. I was running 3 vocal mics, an acoustic guitar, and a keyboard input. So I had 5 mics, 10 inputs, but only 5 of them were really going to be used in the PA to support the room. We were not live streaming this event, by the way, so all I had to do was make the room sound good, and then I sent a basic 2-channel mix up to their live stream that they recorded just for recording purposes. Anyway, so step 2 is setting gain properly. With only 5 inputs, I knew that I had plenty of headroom on this board and plenty of headroom in the PA that I wasn't going to be clipping anywhere. So I was shooting for minus 10 on my meter for each input, and then I ran EQ and compression. So setting that gain properly, though, allowed me to send monitor signals with a full signal to their drummer or anybody else that was running in-ears. Keep in mind, the gain controls everything. The gain determines how your compressor is hit, how your EQ responds. It's going to control your house mix, your in-ear monitors, and your live stream mix. So it's super important to get the gain right. So step 1 is a line check. Step 2, set the gain properly. All right, so at this point, we're moving on to step 3. We already know that our mics are plugged into certain spots. We've got our board lined up. We've gone to our gain setting. That's our sound check. And we're getting everybody to sing at the loudest point or perform at their loudest point that they're gonna do within a service. One of the caveats, before we get into step 3, one of the caveats to note is that people tend to respond differently when there's an audience or a congregation or people in the seats. When it's actually performance time, that volume level might creep up a little bit. So by setting your gain in an appropriate place, if you've got somebody that comes in and just nails that sound check there, you know that that's their biggest singing voice, then you can set that level confidently. If it's a drummer, maybe a bassist, or somebody who's a little bit more dynamic in their playing, you might want to set it a little lower. Maybe minus 12 is a comfortable spot for you, knowing that when they start to play in the service and the band starts to build and the song builds, they might creep up, and so you've got to have that space, that safety space, so that you don't clip. Now, let's get into step 3. Step 3 is setting your house mix. Okay, why is this important? First, because for me, my live stream depends on my house mix. I run a post fader mix bus for my live stream mix. Post fader means that when I make a movement on my fader in the house, that moves the sound or changes the sound in my live stream as well. So it's super important to get that house mix set pretty good so that then you can move on to step 4. But step 3 is set the house mix. How do I do this? I tend to tell the band, hey, listen, your monitors may be out of whack. I don't even recommend using them right now. Maybe, pull them kind of half out of your head or turn the volume down so that if something's a little too loud or different than usual, give me one half of a song to line this up. And so what I do is I just have them play. I say, play as best as you can, use the PA. And so we'll get halfway into the song. I want to hear a verse. Usually the verse is kind of low in our typical music. Chorus gets a little bit bigger. Usually the bridge is either really big or uber soft. But I want to get them into the song so that they start to relax and warm up and get comfortable. At that point, I'm trying to refine I'm trying to feel out how they're going to play, and I'm trying to make sure that my gain is set right. So part of that gain structure is determined by this step 3 of setting my house mix. I can see, oh, now they're actually performing. Your drummer's not just going tsh, 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 tsh on a snare drum. They're actually playing a beat. And how does that hand react when they're playing a beat with cymbals and kick drum and all that stuff? So I want to get that feel right. And at the same time, I'm trying to set my basic mix of my mix in the room of vocals to drums to band to bass to keys to pads and all that stuff. I'm trying to build a basic mix. I have no effects yet in this mix, by the way. This is just building a basic mix. I want to get my faders pretty close. You've got your house mix dialed in. You feel comfortable with how the mix sounds. Now we can move on to the next step. All right, so we started out with a line check, then we went on to our sound check. Now we've gone to our building our house mix and refining our gain structure. We're now at the point where we can start step 4. The fourth and final step is this, which is number 1, I can now tell my band and musicians confidently, hey, you can now set your monitors. I feel comfortable with where your gain is set at. Let's go ahead and take a few minutes. Let's play a song, part of a song, set your in-ear monitors, adjust your mix, and we're gonna feel good about where it's at. So step 4 now is this. You've got your house mix set, and your faders, your post-fader mix for your stream is dependent on your house mix. Well, if the house mix is set, now what we can do is start to refine our stream mix. So for me, I've got one engineer that is, like this Sunday, I'm gonna be running the house sound and the stream sound, the audio for both of them. And so I've got headphones at the board that I run, and I can I can select my mix bus, it sends on fader, and I can then adjust and alter the mix going into my live stream. But because it's dependent on the house mix, I've got to have that house mix lined up first in the previous step. So I'm also in step 4, I'm adding effects, maybe vocal delay, maybe some reverb, and I'm getting that lined up in the room as well as my stream. Now I've got one last tip that comes right after this, but setting this process in order, setting this whole thing up is super crucial so that you can make your band feel comfortable, you can help build your mix well, and you can kind of take a logical process. The biggest thing that this helps out is training other people. You are training other people, right? We want to take an opportunity to get other people involved, and if we set them up for success from day one, we can teach them this process, we can have it lined out, in an email, in a piece of paper, in a laminated document, in a website that maybe we use for our team, but they can go and learn step by step the best way to come in and run this sound setup at your venue. And that's the goal, is make them successful, because then everyone is successful. All right, so this is kind of a bonus tip. We've had 4 steps, but now we've kind of got a 5th step in here. What am I talking about? If you've got the capability of multi-track recording, I plead that you set it up and you use multi-track recording. Here's why. For me, I'm trying to listen to this mix in the room with a full PA banging at me, and I've got these, they're good headphones, Sennheiser HD 280 Pros. If you ever are curious, by the way, of any gear that I use, look down in the description. There's an Amazon link that goes to the Amazon shop, and you can find cables and gear and mics and stuff that I tend to use regularly. Anyway, so I've got these Sennheiser headphones on. They are closed ear headphones or over ear headphones. And I'm trying to listen to my mix, and what I find is that I'm always adding too much kick drum and too much bass guitar, and it ends up pegging my limiter. So here's what I do. I multi-track record the end of rehearsal. The band is warmed up by this time, the mix is good, and I've got a good solid gain structure that goes into my DAW. I record it, and then I stop it. So I immediately play that back, and I solo the stream mix in my ears and in my head, and what I do is I get the mix where I think it should be, and then I do this one trick. This is completely backwards of how I mix in the box, but what I do is I dump the bass and I dump the kick drum. And I get the mix to sound pretty good with all of the other inputs that I've got. Then I add enough kick drum that I've got that rhythmic context, and then I bring the bass up and I add the bass in so that I've got enough bass to support everything It is part of the band, but it is part of the bottom end and the rhythm section, and it kind of matches with the drums, should match with the drums. And I do that to make sure that I'm not clipping anything, that my mix is not getting overly heavy, but I've got the PA muted. That's the biggest thing. Run these tracks back through your soundboard, mute the house so that you don't have any of that noise. You've got a pretty good isolated system at that point, and you can take 5 minutes and make sure that your stream mix is really refined. That's gonna set you up for success, and then trust it. That's the hardest part, is trust the work that you've done to this point. You go out now to mix your event, your service, and you've got everything lined up. You've done the hard work. You've confirmed that your stream mix is good. Now all you've got to do, if you're running this post-fader mix bus setup for your stream, is just mix the house. And when you turn a vocal up or down, it's gonna follow. If you turn the electric guitar up or down, or a different instrument up or down, it's gonna follow in your stream, and you know you've got things lined up well. Well, thanks for checking this video out. You made it this far. Hey, go ahead and hit the like button and the subscribe button. I hope you found value in this video. And if you've got any questions, leave them in the comment section below. I love to help you out. I love to answer questions. If you do need specific individual help, I do consulting stuff across Zoom or even in person if you're close to me. And you can go to my website, which is also below, hit the connect card and let me know. We'll start a conversation there. Well, thanks so much. That's it for this video. We'll catch you in the next one. Peace.